Trump brings Gaza war crimes home to U.S. Autistics. Using starvation to subjugate people is a war crime, whether at the point of a gun or denying SNAP benefits. November 1st, SNAP halted. Healthcare funding threatened. Social Security could vanish, Trump warns. 42 million Americans face losing food assistance. Not someday, right now. A nation that uses starvation on its own civilians? I'm no lawyer, but I'd argue that's tantamount to war on its own people, any day of the week. And I consider it a crime in its own right, even if courts reserve war crime for armed conflict. I can hear it already. You're being dramatic. That's hyperbolic. You can't compare domestic policy to Gaza. Watch me. Medieval siege techniques surround them and starve them out, whether it's Gaza or Indiana. What's actually happening? The Trump administration threatens benefits we count on to exist as political leverage during government shutdown negotiations. Support promised to the American public for decades, transformed into weapons to get what Trump wants. Here's what international law says about that. The Rome Statute explicitly classifies starvation of civilians as a war crime, a crime against humanity. Around the world, deliberately depriving people of food for political gain, that's defined as genocide. These aren't my words, they're international law. Gaza starvation? Internationally recognized war crime. SNAP weaponization? They can call it an unfortunate policy choice, but it's the same tactic, just a different population. Location doesn't change that. Denying food to gain power simply is withholding food, withholding life for power. They're not negotiating. They're holding a gun to our heads. So why autistics first? Numbers tell you everything you need to know. Autistics face an 85% unemployment rate. So we depend a lot on SNAP. I do. Most of us depend on Medicaid to see our doctors. And many of us disabled, unable to work. So SSI dependency, just to live, it's a high priority. The government knows exactly who gets hit when they pull these levers. Autistics, neurodivergents. We're the most vulnerable first. We have the least political power of any minority group, I think. And look at the language they use. Efficiency, streamlining, reducing dependency. It's the old Nazi useless eaters logic, dressed up in techno-bro management appeal. Killing off the weak, dusted off and wrapped in budget terminology. We're the testing ground. And that's how it works. Start with disabled people. Normalize the tactic. See who complains. See who notices. See if you can get away with it. Then expand to the next unpopular or unsympathetic group, like, say, the old. This is my pattern recognition, not my paranoia. We've seen this before. Not in our lifetimes, maybe, but in history. And forgotten history is what they're counting on, that we won't recognize it, that we won't connect dots between what happened then to what's going on now, in front of our eyes. They test on folks like us first, always have. We're the canaries in the coal mine. We die first, and truth, we're already choking. Let's look at the roll call of history. Want to know how I know this is a war crime? Because every failing empire does exactly this. Brings colonial violence home to its citizens. Every single one. The modern era gives us Britain. Brutal tactics perfected on the Irish became standard London cop methods. Violent crowd control tactics used in India, now used on British workers. Emergency power edicts developed in the colonies, now alien acts at home. Listen, I'm not leaving the U.S. off in the history. I just figure I'm pounding on them in the modern moment. We'll come back to them later. France took torture techniques from Algeria and brought him home for Paris riot control. The U.S. militarized policing in the Philippines. That gets deployed in Ferguson. Colonial violence always comes home when empire cracks. Go as far back as you like in history. The Ottoman Empire in its death throes. They used brutal tactics on Bedouins, Yemenis, Armenians, Greek, Assyrian genocides. And it starts with the problematic minorities. Always does. Ancient Rome, Egypt, you name it. Every single empire, when it falls, turns on its own. And it starts with the unpopular groups: Jews, immigrants, disabled people, the defective, the foreign, the unproductive. See if society lets you get away with it. Then repeat, then expand. Scholars call this the boomerang effect, sometimes internal colonialism. Black radical thought of the 60s identified this pattern first. Extraction, surveillance, militarized control, colonial logic applied right here at home. So every failing empire does it. Now it's our turn to live through it, if we can. Hey, look, quick aside. I'm losing my own benefits as we speak, medical, food assistance, rental. If this work matters to you, paid subscriptions keep me doing it. Not required. All the material's free. Just being real. Now, about that gaslighting. The gaslighting ends here. So when someone says, "You're being dramatic," no, I'm being historically accurate and a tad autistic. That's hyperbolic. The Rome Statute disagrees. I can read you the details. You can't compare domestic policy to war. Every empire in history already done that. They already made that comparison for me. We're not comparing tragedies. Who's suffering more than who? We're recognizing tragedy. When policy debates require trigger warnings, like this article, like this live stream, maybe it's not policy. When negotiations threaten survival, maybe they're not negotiations. When efficiency means starvation, maybe it's not efficient. It's fucking violence. That need for trigger warnings says it's violence, not discourse. We're not being fragile. We're being informed. We're watching it happen in real time. Hell, it's obvious in every bowl of beans I eat instead of a heavily tariffed hamburger. I really blew that line, guys. What we do. Living through empire in decline, deadly for many. But here's what we do. We call it as we see it. We refuse sanitized language. When they say policy, we call it violence. Because starvation kills as sure as a bullet, just slower. When they say negotiate, we name it hostage taking for the purpose of political power. When they say efficiency, we shout starvation tactics. It's medieval siege by budget. No catapults, no cannons, just clean spreadsheets. We document the pattern. We recognize what's really happening while it's happening. We tell the truth about what we're witnessing, and we survive together. How? Let's talk again soon on meaningful resistance, survival, and mutual aid. I'm nearly ready to share my thoughts next week in my next live stream. Here's the picture I want to leave you with. Trump brings Gaza war crimes home, not as a metaphor, as a moral diagnosis. Same tactics, similar intent, different location, same fucking outcome. Starvation is starvation. Siege is siege. Death is death. Even if the law reserves war crimes for battlefields and guys in uniform. Starting with autistics, starting with disabled people, starting with poor people, starting with anyone who needs to eat, and expanding from there. Because that's how it always works. That's not drama, not autistic overreaction, if I ever hear that again. Fuck the gaslighting we've lived through all our damn fucking lives. That's international law in definitions. That's documented history in its examples. That's pattern recognition across eras. We're just the ones recognizing it first. Listen, that's all I got, really. This episode, it's why I do these live streams, why I need this community, you guys. Because when they gaslight us, we need witnesses. We need truth. When they isolate us, we need each other. When they threaten our survival, we need to document what's happening in real time. See you next week around the same time. We'll talk resistance, mutual aid, what actually works when the empire comes home. Till then, stay weird, stay fierce, stay alive.